Billy Kelleher, Fianna Fáil MEP for Ireland South, is on the line. Billy, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
You're in Poland at the moment, but you have been in Ukraine. What did you see?
Yes, we crossed over from the Polish side to the Ukrainian side yesterday. We saw, kilometres of queues of cars, people trying to cross the border from the Ukraine into Poland. We saw probably a 4 to 5 kilometre human queue of people just standing on the footpath on the side of the road, mainly elderly people or young families. Many people in wheelchairs, disabilities, most young men not there obviously because they are on the front line. But it was catastrophic to see it being truthful in terms of just the sheer misery and the slowness in terms of processing the people to allow them to cross the border. I mean, the difficulty is that they are coming from, very far east, and they're travelling on trains. Then they may have to get off the trains. They're walking to the last part of the border, and then they may be standing there for 2 days to get across. So this really is, a humanitarian issue that has to be addressed very quickly. We do need to speed up the processing of people coming across the border from Ukraine into Poland, and that's why we were there being truthful, was to just try and highlight this, to see can we get the Commission and member states across the European Union to respond more quickly and effectively in supporting Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania and Moldova in terms of dealing with what is going to be an avalanche of numbers. 1.5 million people have crossed already, and the UNHCR and others that are monitoring this are saying that there could be millions more will come if the humanitarian corridors are opened up and if people start to flee the bombardment from the Russians.
What do you understand is the reason for the slowness? Is it a lack of personnel on the Polish side? Are there language difficulties? I'm sure many of the Poles speak Russian because they would have grown up in an era when Russian was part of their educational system, and Ukrainians pretty much all speak Russian as well. What is the reason for the slowness of process?
Well, I mean, it's just logistics. It's just the sheer numbers of people that are arriving. I mean, we were at a crossing where normally there would be about 2,000 to 3,000 crossings a day between vehicles and people. That is now 60,000 plus. So just the sheer scale and volume of people that are arriving. Bear in mind, we saw a queue of cars 20 kilometres long and a queue of people 4 to 5 kilometres long, and they would have been standing there all day, and they were standing there last night as well. So I mean, it does need to be addressed. So I think they'll have to open up more border crossings, the 6 border crossings from Ukraine into Poland, and I believe that they will just have to open up more or extend the capacity to allow people to move seamlessly, because they're anxious, they're concerned when they're on the Ukrainian side, because they're hearing stories of the bombardment. They may have lost loved ones already. They're fleeing from Russian artillery, from air superiority, and they just want to get across into the European Union. And I just think that our ability to do that.
But has the Polish government asked the European Union for help with this process, or do they feel that they have to up their own efforts on the border with their own people to try to process more people more quickly?
Well, in fairness, the Polish government and the Polish people have really responded. I mean, from what I've witnessed so far, there's a huge effort, both voluntary and at NGO level, and also governmental level, in terms of buses transporting people once they get across the border. But there is a significant issue now in terms of just getting people across. And I think what we need to do is open up so that they can come across the border into, sort of containment areas where they can be assessed on the European Union side of the border. So at least the anxiousness and the concern of standing on a road in Ukraine is the
I understand now what you're saying, that if you can actually open the border but lead people to places where they can be fed, where they can be comfortable, where they can be warm while the processing is done.
Yes.
You've been on the Polish side of the border, of course. So is there space to construct such facilities?
Well, I mean, there's an emergency situation. I think that the European Union, it has resources. Certainly, I think there is a capability to do that. There's endless space. I mean, there's large tracts of land at these border crossings. They're not necessarily big towns. They might be in a very rural area. There's certainly space, or even to bus people from the immediate border and move them very quickly to a place where they can be processed in terms of health, in terms of documentation, in terms of clothing, warmth and food. So I think it's there. It's only to be streamlined. But we do need more border crossings as well. There's only 6, and I don't think that it will have the capacity to deal with what we saw, beginning to move westwards in terms of people just walking, dragging bags, carrying children. It was really, really a very distressing sight, being truthful, Pat.
And finally, Billy, I should ask you, obviously you'll bring that message back to the European Parliament, although they're pretty well informed anyway. What is your message to the Irish government?
Well, my message to the Irish government is that we're a key player. We're a member state of the European Union. I know that the Irish government has been very supportive and is one of the countries that said it will take in, many refugees that arrive across the border. They will take in multiple tens of thousands of them. But what we do need is a collective effort at European Commission level, I think, to coordinate between the member states that are bordering the Ukraine. So that's Poland. Hungary, Slovakia, Moldova, and Romania, so that we have a coordinated effort and that people can move seamlessly into the European Union and then be assessed and processed in terms of being dispersed to areas for accommodation and for shelter.
All right. On that note, Billy, thank you very much for joining us. That's MEP for Ireland South, Fianna Fáil MEP Billy Kelleher.